She's done a lot of innovation in terms of methodologies. She's an author, instructor, and a leader at HFI. Please welcome, I suggest in the chat box, give a quick shout out, a quick hello. Please welcome Apala.
Hey, thanks a lot, Noah, for that wonderful introduction. And good morning or good evening to all of you from, everywhere across the world. I'm sure many of you are right now on this conference from very many different locations. So my session today, of course, is something that we are living in at this moment, designing for emergent worldviews. And there are many transitions, many emergent worldviews. I've taken 3 of those, and that's what I'm going to talk about. Of course, this whole concept of the new normal, it just keeps shifting. Um, I'm from India and I was there till about a few months ago. I just happened to come here in February. But till then, I thought I really understood what the new normal was, because in India, everything was kind of stable in some ways. And so one was looking at transitions, etc. But in the flash of a few days almost, new normal isn't exactly what it is right now, at least not in that part of the world. So it's as if we are all living in a live season of Black Mirror. You just don't know when the show moves where in terms of the episodes. Just they're just so unpredictable what happens. And so I fear right now as I speak about saying definitively what is this new normal, because I think it's still kind of unraveling. And we can do the best we can in looking at some trends that will surely stay on in this transition. And it's interesting that something that one of my favorite, science fiction writers said so many years ago, and I really didn't understand it so well at that point, that the future is here, but it is not evenly distributed today. I understand how crossing, geographical spaces suddenly make you aware that the future is there, but in different manner of speaking. And that is disturbing sometimes to see the unequal distribution of the future. And that is something that is just going to get more heightened unless we were to sort of learn our lessons or take what's going on and our takeaways more seriously from this 1 year that we've been experiencing. It is true that no matter what, it seems like we are very much on the cusp of a complete overhaul of our lifestyles. We're all reflecting. We're all sort of, stepping back a little and saying, hey, there are lots of things we knew. We were told, we read about all kinds of dystopian possibilities because of climate change, etc. But till it really enters your door, so to speak, it just isn't that real, is it? So right now, we're evaluating everything from, words like essential services, essential service workers. Suddenly, it's taken on, all these words have taken on new meaning and new significance, things that perhaps we took for granted. I sometimes feel that since the entire last year, someone is A/B testing our lifestyles to just give us this real lived experience of where we could be headed. And this is just a trailer. So, what's going to happen? Are we going to be sort of completely residing inside our digital caves? Are we going to be bogged down with bad news? Because right now, it's very much like that for me. I take on my first sort of emergent worldview of happiness with a reason. As of now, every day, since the last Sunday, I think, every moment my phone, my WhatsApp pings, I'm terrified because it is somebody in India asking desperately, is there a verified source of oxygen in Delhi? Is there a verified source of getting a hospital bed? Is there a verified source of remdesivir? not selling in the black market every day. And being on a volunteer helpline, it's been absolutely, it's been so depressing to see this. And at the same time, there are glimmers of hope. And so I decided that this is one emergent worldview that is going to be very important. And so let's begin with that. I believe that one thing that we are learning from this experience that we, all of us have had in sort of different ways in this last year, and it's still continuing, is that return on investment, of course, is very important. Growth and development, those, celebrity words that have been in our lives for so long. Yeah, they're important. But you know what? Something more important than that is perhaps to ponder about return on happiness. Does an experience, does a product, does a service, does it bring us, in addition to the growth that we seek, the return on investment that we seek, does it bring us return on happiness? Because maybe that is more important in just avoiding an even more dystopian future. And the interesting thing is that this idea of looking at happiness isn't really new. There's a lot of work that's been going on for decades, actually, where you look at happiness and you see that after a certain amount of material wealth, certain amount of money and income, happiness just plateaus. More money doesn't bring more happiness. This is something we've known for a while, and these studies have been around for a long time. Something called an Easterlin paradox is this, that beyond a certain income, which at that point that the study was done, $10,000 a year, there is no increase in happiness. But we've still not really acted on that in any way, not in our designing of ecosystems, not in our researching of ecosystems, no matter what domain we work in as designers. But it hasn't been one of the elements to be investigated, which I believe now it is. In the last decade or so, many of you will be aware of this, but this tiny Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan has decided that gross national happiness, their king decided gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. GNP is how, again, one of those celebrity measures to decide whether a country is doing well-being of a country. And this was displaced with the feeling that that doesn't tell you anything about the well-being of the country. Let us find out how. And so they created a series of measures with, Nobel Prize winning economists, sociologists coming together and defining what would be a robust measure of GNH, or gross national happiness. Since then, that has slowly taken off. Several countries have tried to see how to incorporate this. And in the last year, this has taken on more importance. So this trend is going to get more and more intense. And I take, a lot of joy thinking that even immersed as I am in so much suffering that's happening in India, but I take joy that this is going to become more pronounced, looking at how we measure our well-being, our national well-being, in terms of criteria that is more than just income. The World Happiness Report has been out since 2012, and they measure happiness, the worldwide study every year to rate countries. They do surveys with citizens of countries and then rate which country is the most happy country, etc. And again, many of you are familiar with this. But what I find interesting is there are some countries which are always at the top of the list. And which countries are those? They're normally the Scandinavian countries, the Nordic countries. So what is it about the fact that a certain group of countries seem to constantly figure? There are always one or two, that come and go from the top 10 list, but there are some regular, usual suspects in that top 10 list. Now there's more interest in studying what is it that makes those citizens report more happiness about their state of being. And there are, if you read about this in the last 6 months, there's been a lot of research and a lot of different perspectives are now emerging about why people in the Nordic countries, what is that mindset that makes them feel happier? Because in many ways, the material and objective conditions are similar to many other countries. So what are those subjective conditions? What is that, what is the psychological and emotional perspective that is different? And again, this is going to become more and more sort of an area to be studied and to be factored into the work that designers do, the way we think. When we go out to design something in whether it's for our clients, whether it's for the organization that we work in, but this is going to be important. Citizens, this is something that is so enlivening. When I saw last year, I was tracking what's going on across the world, Heart Hunters, which is an example from here, from the United States. And again, many of you may be familiar with this, but I thought it was incredible. There was, a mom who decided one day in the midst of the raging pandemic in the US last year that you've got to do something. And so it's not that, you have to wait for the government and other institutions to take on any kind of initiative. She took on this initiative saying, hey, every time you want others to feel cheerful, one of the ways that you can do that is to draw or create a heart out of any material you have in your house and put it up in some space in your house, outside your house, where others who are walking outside can see it and feel that we are all in it together. And it became a movement. I mean, you can see that, 800 and whatever, 50,000 people on that Facebook group. And the kind of stories they were reporting was at one level heartbreaking, but at another level, so much hope that everyone's together in this. And everyone was literally kind of saying, hey, I spotted hearts here. I spotted in front of this huge hotel building. They have also joined the Heart Hunters initiative. So this is another trend. I believe citizens will take more of this mobilization and organization of their well-being in their hands in a good way, which perhaps wasn't so important till, before we experienced this very strange period. What I find really interesting, though, is that if you note the countries that appear the top of the sort of happiest countries list also always appear on any list, any international list of most designer-y countries, innovative countries, creative countries. It's the same countries. What is that? What does that mean? And my takeaway from that is, design plays some role. What is that exact role that weaves well-being and happiness? I'm not sure, but that is my area of research at this moment. I believe design will play this role of being a healing discipline. It will serve, stakeholders everywhere. And because design also embraces other disciplines much more willingly than many other fields do. And we know design's already working with the positive psychology, already working with, sort of different futuring techniques to look at the future and say what can be done differently so that we have a good future, as well as things like life design. So there's so much that design seems to already be looking at, which is about the bigger picture for the world. And there surely is some reason why all the Nordic countries, which are so famous for their design and innovation, are also happy. So let's take some learning from that. Let's look at what is it, and that's something that I really sort of ask all of you to look into, because the more we look into that and find what is that thread that connects design to happiness, I think the more we can contribute as a field to a world that really needs it right now. One thing, though, that I feel is going to be different in terms of well-being and happiness is we will increasingly be looking at the needs of our users, customers, of people, now from the lens of a collective, of a community, rather than just as, a sum of individual needs. So when we look at sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, etc., it lends itself, the construct lends itself often to us looking at individual needs and summing them to say, okay, so we've studied, these people in our research, and well, each one of them, as we synthesize all their needs, this is overall, what we're seeing. But is there another way to look at the common good, not just the sum of individual needs? And this ongoing pandemic is certainly telling us something about that, and is saying that it is so much better for us in terms of our survival, prosperity, and evolution if we balance extreme individualism with well being and understanding and embracing the community. So there are constructs in different parts of the world, because I work in these cultures, in these two cultures. So I'm very aware of them. They've always impressed me because it's been there for so long. Ubuntu in Africa and South Africa, which many of you again will know, this whole concept that, I exist because of all of you. We are all in it together. In Philippines, Malaskit, which is very similar, but it's about a common struggle. It's about how we can all compassionately come together to struggle for a cause. And these are very important elements of these cultures. Similarly, there is bound to be, elements like that in all our other cultures. We just may have started to sort of either take them for granted, or somehow maybe in some cultures they haven't been given the importance that it should. But I think what I am personally taking away is there is going to be this need and trend for a collective lens to create more happiness in this new normal. Lots of that has been happening. You will see that, not even just during the pandemic, but from even just before that, there are all kinds of platforms available, whether it's about sort of, things that are based on hobbies like this one, quilt making. So bringing people together based on a common interest, or it's about bringing people together because of a particular feeling they're in, a particular mental and emotional state of being. So bringing people together based on that, or it's a stage of life. And so people need to come together and feel the support. All this has been happening. This is just going to take off even more. And we have lots of opportunities as designers to think about more along these lines. This I find interesting, that there's been such a growth across the world. So you'll see these are not just any one part of the world, but all across the world. This growth in everybody participating virtually in very mundane activities. So Instagram is one of the key sort of, it epitomizes this growth in the last year, where somebody will just be doing something mundane, like, okay, I'm studying now. And so many people from across the world join in. We're all studying and we're all doing it together, or, cleaning the house or cooking. So this feeling of we're doing it together, and feeling we're part of this community in the midst of times that have, at times when it was really difficult to really see anybody else. But even now, the scars that's left is making this concept really stick of being together. And not just looking at somebody, a celebrity who is doing something on the social media, and so it's a live stream and we're just watching that. No, it's just participating in very, very ordinary activities. So that's something that also is part of this whole happiness through being together, watching things, partying together. You all know that, whether it's Netflix party or Instagram co-watch, and there's so many other platforms like that. The thing to consider as a designer is, if this is part of going to be an emergent worldview in the new normal. What tools do we think as designers that we need as designers? That is different perhaps from what we've been using. So of course, we in design school we've learned systems thinking, and I personally learned but never paid much attention to it after that. But I think that's one of the tools. There could be so many others, and this I'm putting this on the table just for all of you to think, of tools you may know, or ways or processes or frameworks that allow us to think of the community. So it allows us to think of, the whole, the fact that it's the moment it's communities, it's not a linear sort of way of understanding. It's about networks, it's about the processes, it's about how do you, instead of breaking things apart and understanding, how do you put things together and understand. So could be systems thinking, could be other ways like that, but it just means we need to perhaps shift a little bit in how we approach any consideration of a design outcome, and start right from the time that we are initially thinking about, our research with users about what is the intent of that design. Right at that point, we perhaps have to now look at happiness, well-being, collective community consideration. So that to me is one of the most important emergent worldviews, and something that is so critical when we are still not sure if we have sort of managed to get past this pandemic. Maybe it'll take a few more months in some parts of the world. The second of the emergent worldviews, there are two that I've clubbed in here because they are more, well, happiness is at a more sort of overarching level of thinking. But these are very concrete ways in which designers will certainly have to be involved. So these two that I have picked out from other sort of worldviews is what's going to happen with healthcare, and also this integration of real and virtual in the new normal. So for healthcare, again, all of you will have experienced the need for, distance sort of mechanisms of diagnosis to advice, etc., etc. And so in the last year, it's no surprise that so many hospitals and healthcare facilities and practitioners have reported that what they were trying to tell their institutions for the last 10 years just happened in a matter of a few months. And so telemedicine, use of AI, all the ways that virtual care can be done, all of these things suddenly came into being. And we've seen that, in various degrees, because the future is not evenly distributed, unfortunately, in this case. In some places more, in some places less, but everyone wanted to pivot to this. And where it wasn't possible because infrastructure wasn't ready, etc., it's been very, very difficult to, therefore, the outcome of not having all that has taken a toll on the citizens of that part of whichever part of the world, or many parts of the world where infrastructure wasn't ready. So I follow Shwetak quite regularly on any kind of virtual platform that he speaks about. And he has for a long time been saying that we need to look at the most ubiquitous device, a piece of technology that we have, which is the phone. And how can you add to the phone in order to do distant healthcare? And it was now that that became so very important. So whether it is the fact that in a situation like the pandemic, you're stuck, and any other conditions, any other health conditions, what do you do about that? It's not COVID, then it's, I can't go to a doctor, I can't see anybody, etc. What do I do? And I just lost a cousin because he was suffering from a brain tumor. And suddenly, when the situation in India in the last month went from bad to worse, the tumor started playing up, but there was no way he could be taken to hospital. He just couldn't. So they did whatever they could through Zoom. The neurosurgeon, advice didn't help. He just passed away 3 days ago. So, and I thought again and again of Shwetak and so many others like him, who have been saying for so long, many things can be done if we look at this area of research of how you can use mobile based technology and mobile devices to monitor and diagnose other kinds of conditions. So he's been doing a lot, you add different kinds of sensors, etc. So whether it's testing hemoglobin or testing, osteoporosis, things that for a year, if you can't get any of these things done, it can severely impact health. So this is another trend. And this is where designers are going to play a huge role in making this ability to interact with these kinds of apps, these kinds of platforms, making it accessible and usable for a diverse group of users from across the world. We'll play a very, very important role in this. Right now, this is the other thing. So, every day part of my job is just to be looking at verified sources that citizens have put together for India. Verified sources where oxygen can be available, verified sources of doctors who are able to take patients, etc., etc. I believe this is another thing that is now going to emerge. This memory that it was citizens collectives that really came to everybody's rescue. So the citizens collective and how they put together information, healthcare information for public good is going to stay. And that's going to be another very big area where we can, as designers, help in creating more sort of accessible ways in which this information can be consumed, and the authenticity of the information, etc. How do you mark all that? These are things we can do, because as I see these lists, etc., come up, I keep wondering, oh, I wish they knew how to mark some of these things. So people who are scanning in a moment of distress, they know that, oh, these things are not so authentic as these other parts of the list. So they don't have to look at everything and figure things out. So there are many things that we could do in this manner of putting collective healthcare and information across the communities. And the last one in the emergent worldview, which is sort of fun, is how we are going to live. We are going to create and inhabit all kinds of different universes. And I found this very interesting, where Brown and Hudson, which is one of those very sort of top end upscale travel agencies, for want of a better word, they've been talking about how they have clients, and this was last year, clients were asking them, because they can't really travel safely anywhere, to create a land for them, a virtual destination just for the family to travel to. And they've done a lot of work on that. So it's a virtual world that created for yourself, where you inhabit, where you travel, where you find all sorts of things, but it's just made for you. So those kinds of things will happen. I'm not a gamer, but I see how many gaming platforms have come to the rescue of people who were not able to get together, whether the graduation ceremony happening, Minecraft or Fortnite, which has been again a gaming platform that's been hosting so many concerts. And I looked at one or two of their videos. It's fascinating. You are the avatar, you're a player, you're an avatar, but now you're just coming together for this virtual stadium, listening to this musician. And everybody's, and they're like, okay, players, for now, no bloodshed, leave your weapons. Listen, I think it was very, very interesting. More than that, it just tells us, again, as designers, platforms like this will take on more significance as we move forward. It's not just for recreation. There'll be other needs that these platforms will need to fulfill. And again, as designers, we should be thinking about that. We have the Japanese hologram. This pop icon has been there for a while, but became even more popular last year. And suddenly, we are going to be designing not for a human musician or performer, but for a hologram who is more popular than real musicians in Japan. So this is going to be very important also. virtual concerts are happening, and all of these things, gathering people in multiverses where perhaps many of us who wouldn't really be there, but we have decided to participate because there were no other avenues in a period when there were lockdowns or safety was a concern. So to me, these are just three things that I talked about. There are many other points of view that I have in terms of emergent worldviews. But one thing I want to end with is there will be more. It is indeed a time of transition, but the main thing is, of course, climate change. This is just a trailer, right? So we have to flatten that other curve before, or at least mitigate, because depending on who you speak to, you can get very pessimistic views, or, well, we can do something. So I believe, again, as designers, we have to think about that. And so we have to help our organizations and people to look into the future and see how, using all these trends, emergent worldviews, our points of view, how can we move in a different direction that will help, if not totally avoid, at least reduce the negative impact of where we are going. So my thing is, and this is from, it's not, something I said, but I thought this is very interesting. Use a compass. Don't look at maps, which sometimes you just go round and round. There will be no way because it's already decided. Use a compass that gives you direction, and then use vision and direction to find your way in uncharted territory. So let's learn. We are very good actually as designers to be intuitive, to sense these things along with, the science we use in order to arrive at certain decisions. Let us make full use of that and amplify those skills. So I think with all of this, while people are zigging, designers, help your organizations, help people to zag so that we avoid dystopian ecosystems in the future. Thank you. That's all I have for today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Apala. Let's do just one quick question, yeah? So I see in the Q&A box, so Andrew asks, the marketing environment forms its whole foundation on designing for discontent. How do we counter this to be able to find a better way to help improve the happiness of our users?
Interesting question. So it's a lot of it is about how do you integrate into me. And I've been sort of trying to test this out during this period. So I am trying to research with people, with citizens. I don't call them users anymore. I'm saying citizens. And I'm trying to push out a list of values, universal values, which include values that are positive, and it also includes values which sometimes contradict the pure positivity and well-being. I'm trying to push these out and say, think about this, in your experiences, the experiences you want us to design, which of these are very important for you? Have you thought, when you use a banking site or when you use an e-commerce site, have you thought whether these values are part of it? Are these important for you? The conversation that starts is incredible. That to me is the beginning, that let's change the way that we have been looking at design frameworks, and let's include ways to initiate conversations with citizens who are also known as users about what is important. And you'll find shifts and engagement that I have not found earlier. So that's, as far as now, that's my take on it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Apala. Guys, give Apala a big kind of round of applause by putting a message in the chat box. Make sure you use the drop down to switch it so it goes to all panelists and attendees. That's nice because then you can see each other's